day, everyone. This is your teacher, Miss Mars. And on today's video, I will continue my discussion of Unit 1. And this video would cover the last lesson that we are supposed to cover for Unit 1, and that is Lesson 5. Lesson 5 is all about the principles and procedures and materials development. So I know you all are ready. Thus, without further ado, let's begin. So at this point, allow me to share my screen with everybody so that you can view our PowerPoint presentation. So lesson 5. I have here our lesson introduction. So lesson 5 class, this lesson obviously would introduce you to the following principles and procedures in materials development. Second, it would also give you a glimpse of who Stephen Krashen, being the father as described in the previous lessons. So let's try to take a look at lesson 5 now. What are the desired learning outcomes? So these are the learning outcomes. First, you will share your thoughts about the principles and procedures in materials development. And the second one, you would be able to search another sample procedure of materials or of developing materials. Now, there are principles in materials development. So we are going to take a look into Bell and Gower in 2011. So these principles actually, Bell and Gower created or crafted these principles in order to guide them writing or creating the material. So first, the material should be flexible, and the material should definitely have this characteristic, which is being from text to language. So obviously, since this is an English language material, of course, you should incorporate text, and then after to language, that means there should be explanation about the text. And then engaging content. So the content that you should include in the materials, according to Bell and Gower, should be engaging. Students should be able to participate and enjoy the content. Of course, the fourth one, natural language. So natural language meaning what is being used in reality. That would be the focus. And analytic approaches. So students here would definitely be involved in a lot of analytical activities. And the way our material should also be crafted should be analytic rather. And then emphasis on review. So there should be a review. Personalized practice, that means we all know that every student is unique. So we should make sure that we incorporate practices that would allow students' individual skills to foster, or that they would be able to really hone their individual skills. And then integrated skills, meaning it would be not only one skill, but a lot of skills, balance of approaches, learning to learn, and the material should have this characteristic, professional respect. So these are the guides of Bell and Gower in 2011. Now we also have here principles of effective materials development. So we have the role of frameworks and material development. And then every teacher, that's why class we do really have frameworks, because the framework would really guide us as to how we are going to create the material. We cannot just actually create a material without considering principles, frameworks, theories, because those frameworks, those principles would be our basis. And then every teacher is a material developer. That is, of course, number one fact. We all are material developers, because by the time we create our lesson plan, that means we are creating a material that we have to utilize in that specific subject or specific class. Contextual realization of materials. So by context, pedagogical realization of materials. We will be equipped with pedagogies, which we are learning in this subject at the same time in your other subjects. The education subjects to be specific. And then student use of material, that should be our principle as developers. Evaluation, we have to make sure we evaluate, and then the production of the material. So if we are going to follow or take a look at these principles, then we would be able to develop our materials really well. And Pinia, Florida, in 1995, he actually reports her use of the 6 principles of materials design. So not only one person or two, but a lot of people are actually, or a lot of researchers, authors are giving their principles, their framework. So it is up to us if which among those we are going to follow. So the first, for Peña, Florida, material should be clearly linked to the curriculum they serve. Okay, that is very important. Actually, whatever is mandated in the curriculum, of course, the material should also follow or should definitely be should equate or should consider the curriculum. And the next, material should be authentic in terms of text and task. The meaning of being authentic, that means should be realistic. Students should be able to really apply it in real life situation. And going back to the first, when we say material should be clearly linked to the curriculum they serve, I would just like to add, because we all know that curriculum changes from time to time. And of course, if it changed, there could be a different considerations on the new one in terms of what is the focus, what are the desired outcomes. Also, does it follow these language policies? So a lot of things should be considered. Thus, when the curriculum changes, the material should also adapt with the changes. Okay, for example, class, we know before we have the basic education, now we already have the K to 12. So because the K to 12 is a new curriculum, our materials also change and it adapts. They adapt to the new curriculum that we have. And then materials should stimulate interaction. So our materials should allow our learners to interact and engage themselves in the activities that you included. And then materials should allow learners to focus on formal aspects of the language. So why formal aspect? Is it because our learners are young, our learners are, for example, we have high school learners, we cannot teach them the informal way of using the language because that is something that they can learn in the community or by they can learn with their friends or in the movies. So in school, it should be formal aspects of the language, so formal expressions that we are going to teach to our learners. And then materials should encourage learners to develop the learning skills and skills in learning. So if you notice here, what is being emphasized are the skills in order for us to learn. But here, that means the learning here actually describe the skill. So learning here would be the outcome, while here learning, this is since this learning here modifies skills, that means it's your style so that you would be able to learn. Okay, and then materials should encourage learners to apply their developing skills to the world beyond the classroom. So it's not only our materials are definitely does not support globalization or internationalization, no, because our materials should encourage learners to apply their developing skills to the world beyond the classroom, so to the world. Okay, when we say to the world, that means does not only limit to our locality, but it should be like internationally or globally. And students should be able to learn how to apply the skills that they've learned in your English class or in their English class. And then we do have here Hall's theoretical principles. And according to Halls, he thinks they should underpin everything else, which we do in planning and writing our materials. Like when we are going to plan and write our materials, we should consider all these principles, theoretical principles. First, the need to communicate. So we have to communicate the need for long term goals. So when we create our materials, we should really identify what are our long-term goals. The need for authenticity, it should be authentic. That means it's not superficial. Students can use that in reality. The need for student-centeredness, so that means we have to make sure we cater our students, not the teacher's interest, because it's student-centered. And Tomlinson, actually in 2013, he argues that second language acquisition is facilitated by, number one, a rich and meaningful exposure to language in use. So when we say our learners would acquire a second language, or a certain child acquires second language, then it should be facilitated by exposing him to a rich and meaningful materials that definitely made use of the language that he or she would learn. Okay, and then affective and cognitive engagement. So when students are learning or acquiring rather a second language, it should be effective. That means the emotional aspect of the learners should be linked, or he or she should be engaged affectively and cognitively. So cognitive meaning the brain, affective the heart. Okay, and then making use of those mental resources typically used in communication in the L1. So if we have materials in our L1, so they can make use of that one in order for them to learn or acquire the second language. Noticing how the L2 is used. So allow the learners or allow the child to notice how the second language is being used in context or in situation, and being given opportunities for contextualize and purposeful communication in the L2. So here we also teach or let the child be exposed on chances that they would be able to see how a certain words expression is used in context. So that's why it's contextualized. And purposeful communication. Why do you have to learn this? What is this for? What is your purpose? And being encouraged to interact and allowed to focus in meaning. So our materials should allow the child to interact, and at the same time being able to focus in meaning. And then we do have here procedures and materials development. So Zul in 1995, based on Ruzul, there is a lesson format that we can definitely make use. And the following are: A, starter, input, general information, language focus, and task. So we can take a look at here if it is a module. But also, we can consider these components that we are using them in our lesson plan. So when we create a lesson plan, we have to make sure we have the starters. It's like the um, stimulating activity, and then we have the input. So what are the things that we are going to tell or inform our learners? General information about it. And then after language focus, so now here we are going to discuss about the grammar, and then tasks. So language focus, what specific lesson in English is being covered in this portion, okay, or in this unit, in this lesson. So we have the starter. The starter would be like you can start it with a thought-provoking question or paragraph. It's introductory, and then this would actually set the mood of our learners. And we do have input, general information, language focus, and eventually we included task. And Flores 1995 outlines a lesson format with the following basic stages. So um, not only Ruzul was able to craft format, lesson format, but also Flores in the year 1995. And this is Flores lesson format. First, listening with understanding. So we are talking about how everything should be done. For example, if this is a lesson plan, these are the things that should be considered. And if this is a course book, you have to make sure you all have these components. So first, let's say lesson one, or listening with understanding. Using grammar in oral interaction, reading for understanding, writing, and then literature. And we have Jolly and Bolito in 2011. They have also different approach to frameworks. And actually they focus on a unit framework. And let's see what are the principles, or what are the procedures rather. So first, identification of need for materials. Second, exploration of need. Third, contextual realization of materials. Then we go into the pedagogical realization of materials. So of course, pedagogy class would always be there. It's very important. And then we have production of materials. After materials are produced, of course, it should be used or utilized by the learners. And then evaluation of materials against agreed objectives. So these are our procedures as to framework in terms of materials development. So we have to make sure we identify why there is a need to come up or to produce such material. And then let's explore what is his or her need, so that as a writer, you will have more understanding. And then contextual realization of material. So you have to take a look at it in a in a way that the context is the context of the users. And then pedagogical realization of materials. And then after, we do produce and then allow the students to use the materials and then evaluate. Okay. Tomlinson in 2013 framework for text-driven approach to materials development. So these are, according to Tomlinson, text collection. Of course, you collect text, okay? And then after, you select. And then you experience. And then three, it's still for the fourth, okay, you do experienced it. And then you have here intake response activities. And after that would be the developmental activities and then input response activities. So that means the students here would be asked to give their input as a response to what they have read. So there are recommended stages for text-driven approach. So we have stage one, readiness activities, and these are the following characteristics. So thinking about something personal, which will help the learners to connect with the content of the core text. So there is personal connection. Since the learner would be thinking, there would be visual imaging and use of inner speech. So it is the learner is trying to communicate himself. Okay, experiential activities, that is for the readiness. So we have to make sure we incorporate readiness activities in our material. Next, experiential activities, linking the images and thoughts from the readiness activities to the text when first experiencing it. And of course, you do have personal connection, you do visual imaging, you also use your inner speech, and this time there is an addendum on affective and cognitive engagement and use of high-level skills and should focus on meaning. So these are experiential activities. And then intake response activities, developing and then articulating personal responses to the text. So whatever are the responses that you have in the text given, okay, you have to articulate that. That's why we call it intake response activities. Personal connection, you do also visual imaging, affective and cognitive use of inner speech, and this time there is already interaction. Okay. We have development activity 1, so developing the text by continuing it, relocating it, changing the writer's views, personalizing it, and responding to it. So we do have here personal connection. We do also visual imaging. There is also use of inner speech, affective and cognitive engagement, and then use of high level skills. We do focus on meaning, and then there is interaction, purposeful communication. So next would be input response activity. So we focus here on the specific linguistic, pragmatic discourse, the genre, cultural feature of the text in order to make discoveries about its use. So this is the fifth step. And then here, the writer here is doing personal connection. Okay, visual imaging, he or she is using inner speech. This time there is also affective and cognitive engagement. And the input response activity, you are using high level skills, um, society students, okay? And then there is interaction and then noticing. And then development activity two, you'll be the revising the first draft from four above, making use of their discoveries in five above. So you are going to take a look at here the four, okay? And then, of course, class, this is the last for the procedures. Now we do have Stephen Krashen. Stephen Krashen was actually mentioned as our father. Actually, he plays a very vital role in second language acquisition. And Stephen Krashen, he is an expert in the field of linguistics, and obviously he specializes in language acquisition and development. And he is still alive, of course, as Stephen Krashen. And he has his theory on SLA, or second language acquisition, and these are the following. No? Of course, we have the natural order. This is SLA theory by Stephen Krashen. The natural order hypothesis, the acquisition learning hypothesis, monitor input, and then the affective filter hypothesis. These are actually very, very easy to understand. So what I want you to do, as also part of the oral recitation, part of the feedbacking in our Google Meet, which I am going to schedule next week. So you have to make sure you research on the SLA theory of Stephen, because it's easy to understand the natural order hypothesis, acquisition learning, the monitor input, affective filter, and please do also bring with you example. So this is now the second topic, or the second task that you are going to do under oral recitation, because the first, it would be your experience when you were in the lower years or the previous years, experience that you were asked to develop materials. And what you would do is just to share your experience about it. This time we go more objective. You have to look into the SLA theory of Stephen, and please do check on these things. Because as English language learners, you should know Stephen Krashen's theory. Okay, theory on second language acquisition. Next, to know the concepts of these hypotheses, I actually included here the link so that it would be easier for you and you will be guided. So let's have here just a little bit of, I have a short video on the comprehensible input of Stephen Krashen. Okay, so after watching the video, I believe you were able to get something, or you have your takeaway. And he explained here, Stephen Krashen explained about comprehensible input, which is very important. And that's the only way we could be able to acquire another language, when we understand the meaning, or when we understood the language that we are trying to acquire. Because if there's no understanding, it would just gonna um, frustrate us, and at the same time we don't want to study at all if we don't understand. So even if we memorize, but then memorization would just fail us as well, because eventually we're gonna forget it. So it should be, you understand the meaning, that is comprehensible input. And if you notice, the second lesson, what Stephen Krashen did, he incorporated it with action so that the students would be able to grasp what does the words or the expressions mean based on how he or she used it in action, or if you're going to use it, so if you understand the meaning of a certain word, then you would be able to learn another language. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody, for listening. um, Okay, so we have very wonderful message on this thank you slide, and I believe you appreciate it because you understand what you have read and what you have heard from the song, and you feel it. So that's why we call it the comprehensible input, when you understand and you know the meaning. So thank you very much, class, for listening and for being with me for the rest of Unit 1, for the entire Unit 1 video lectures from Lesson 1 all the way to Lesson 5. I hope you have takeaways and I hope you were able to learn a thing or two. So next week, we will have our Google Meet for feedbacking and for your oral recitation. Don't forget that. And I hope you all are doing well. And God bless us all and keep safe, everyone. Bye.